Yes, sir.
I'd like to hear about if you've made any investments or what your thesis is on the genomic sector where DNA cost of
Genomics.
cost of falling sequencing is making it possible to do personalized medicine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But and the analysis is still a problem. So what are the challenges? What are the sort of opportunities you see there?
Sorry, I'm not going to have too much of a help for you there. I don't know that much at all about that field. We've done an investment in a company called uBiome that's sort of similar to the genetic mapping they do, I guess, detection of what's in your guts, particular biomes, and trying to assess whether that has positive or negative effects on health. Again, I can sort of give you a very off-the-cuff answer, but I'm not the most informed person about genomics. In general, as what I understand is cost of doing DNA mapping is coming down quite considerably, so I'm sure there's a lot of interesting businesses to be created from that, but I wouldn't be the best person to advise. Yes, sir?
What would you look for an Indian startup like to make an investment? Like
what would I look for in an Indian startup? Probably the same thing I would look for in any other startup, which is some sense of solving a customer problem, a way to make money, and hopefully a way to do that scalably. Most of the investments that we make, we try and look for relatively capital efficient businesses, so ones that don't cost much money to get off the ground. Typically, most of the investment we're making is going to human capital for product development and in later stages, customer acquisition and marketing. Because of that, we haven't done a lot of hardware-based businesses. We're starting to look at that a little bit more now as the cost of hardware is coming down and as hardware-software combinations become more interesting. We might start doing that. But I think there's a lot of misplaced attention sometimes on Internet of Things and hardware businesses, which are definitely interesting, but there's some substantial challenges with anything that's slightly capital intensive and manufacturing related, in that you have greater costs, longer cycle time on product development, and you might even have to pay a distributor to get shelf space, and they might squeeze the margins on you. So I think in a lot of cases, hardware-based businesses probably have additional complexity, or at least additional challenges above and beyond just pure software-based businesses.
Yeah, it is a software-based business. Like initially for the product development, there's some amount of human capital investment and money.
Yeah.
But once it gets to the market, right, then the infrastructure challenges come. So hosting and storage.
Yeah, although I guess the distinction I would make between software and hardware-based businesses, if you get software wrong, you can probably redevelop and ship quite quickly. If you get hardware wrong, it's longer cycle time. And again, each of those cycles probably costs sort of minimum critical mass run in resources. Not to say that hardware isn't going to be an interesting and big business, it's just that there's additional costs and risks in doing those businesses. One thing is, I think a lot of people looking at Internet of Things and hardware overlook marketing and sales, and I would say that's even more important for those businesses to get right.
At what stage does 500 startups take its incubatees?
At what point in their process? So usually when we started out about 2 or 3 years ago, we were taking some people with products in development that hadn't gotten to customer stage, and even a few concept-based businesses. We don't really do that anymore. So all of the companies that we're accepting have functional product, and probably 80 to 90% of them have customers. Typical time when we would start getting interested is probably between $5,000 to $15,000 US per month. For companies that are in international geographies, we might take them at slightly lower levels. But we've even had companies come in with $1 million run rates, in some cases $2 or $3 million run rates. That's more unusual.
$5,000 to $15,000.
Interesting enough for someone to buy. So there's two substantial risk points in early stages of companies. One is getting product out the door and functional. The other one is finding customers who will use it or pay for it, in particular pay for it. There's a lot of, I think, smart people who will hustle pretty hard to get sales to happen. What we're trying to see is beyond that, is there scalability in the marketing?
So do you help in the first part or the next part? Means do you help?
Do we help with getting product out the door or getting customers?
Yes.
We don't really help with getting product out the door. I mean, we can, but that's probably a low leverage point. I think there's a lot of talented product people, engineers, designers,
I
et
much
cetera.
more meant as positioning it properly. You might have a product,
Yeah.
but positioning it properly, that's a very
We
large
do,
thing.
we do a lot of work with marketing and distribution, and particularly online customer acquisition channels is one of our strengths, I would say. So search, social, mobile, video, email, affiliate. I don't know, it's probably about 5 or 10 other channels that might be interesting.
Because as techies, we don't understand much about the positioning part.
Right,
We
and
can
that
build
was-
a product, but then
Well,
we get stuck.
I don't want to get too stereotypical because I think there are smart people who are engineers too, but I started out as an engineer, and the things that I didn't really understand very well were design UX and were marketing and sales, and that took a while. So in my opinion, where a lot of founders are technical, you don't necessarily need to teach them as much about the tech. What you probably want to help them with is the other parts of the business that are critical in nature. And so design and UX is an area that we emphasize a lot. We actually run a conference on design and UX, and we try and bring in designers, particularly I would say usability people to work with companies. There's an interesting distinction between design and UX that some designers think they're really great at coming up with amazing designs, and we usually just want to figure out how to help customers use products. But the significant leverage point, I think, for most software-based companies that are selling to consumer and small business and even departmental enterprise is being able to use online channels for customer acquisition. So that's an area we spend a lot of time in. We've done a lot of investments in those areas. We know most of the platform companies that are providing those channels, and that's a really big area of emphasis.
What about businesses like Twitter, which didn't have a revenue model for a very long time? Would they be of interest?
If you want to build Twitter, great, go ahead, good luck.
I'm saying, would those kind of businesses be of interest?
We've done a few growth-based businesses, but we probably would want to see substantial traction on those businesses if we're going to make an investment. So for consumer-focused downloads, we'd probably be looking for single-digit million downloads and at least 5-figure active user base, probably even 6-figure active user base to be interesting. Depends on whether it's paid or free. But I think there's maybe a lot of emphasis on businesses being free in the beginning, and of course, the big stories that everybody hears about are Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, which did not monetize for a very long time. That is the exception, not the rule, and we generally are not as focused on those types of businesses. They're much higher risk. So we.
Consumer-based apps based on SaaS or the cloud model coming up in the future? How do you think of it?
Sorry, the question was consumer-based apps based on what?
Consumer-based cloud apps coming up, and how do you see and find a startup looking at such ventures?
Could you give me an example?
I mean, My Universe is one of the examples that has.
What?
Universe?
My Universe.
Yeah, it's one of the products that has just come up sometime back.
I'm not familiar with that. What does it do?
Manager for an end user. It's like Intuit for India.
I guess there's tons of personal productivity plays that are interesting and hopefully monetize modestly well. So that's an area we would spend a lot of time on. We do a lot of investment in e-commerce businesses, in SaaS businesses, productivity tools for both individuals and small business. We've started to do more in departmental and enterprise, and we've done a fair amount of mobile, but we probably are looking more for mobile services that are related to other businesses that already have transaction component or business model built in. There's a lot of interesting businesses to be built based on mobile and free apps, but it's a very competitive space and, again, requires scale in a lot of cases to monetize. Yes? Online acquisition channels that are under exposed or not looked at. Video in particular. I think that an area that we're starting to look at a lot is video-based commerce, so trying to combine a content business around a transactional vertical with the actual business itself or an affiliate model that connects with that business. We did an investment in a company called Ipsy that Michelle Phan, she does a lot of makeup videos on YouTube. That business is doing extremely well now. They sell both a monthly subscription as well as transactional business for beauty products. I think they're doing, I don't know, around $80 million a year right now.
But as a channel, do you see startups maybe using video-based content as the way McClure uses?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty of eyeballs and time being spent on YouTube, and if you can find the right methods to promote your videos, whether that's paid or organic, I think, probably organic is more interesting if you can figure that out, but there's probably paid ways to do that as well. If you think about kind of overall aggregate time that users are spending in different channels and different medium, mobile video in general and mobile video in the last 1 or 2 years have just really exploded. And so when you look at sort of like what channels have been explored and arbitrage, paid search is one that people have been around for 10 years. It's hard unless if you have a really great product and or really great marketing copy, you can still do effective paid search. Hopefully you can do effective organic search as well. It's not to say that that's played out, that's just harder. Social, paid or organic on Facebook and Twitter are probably interesting places as well. But relative to time spent online, I think there's a lot more people trying to work on search and social than are working on video. So there's an arbitrage opportunity in video, I think, for the next year or two. And the field's changing really fast, so there's probably a lot of different techniques in video-based acquisition. In fact, I'd say YouTube being one of the primary platforms is still not great about providing distribution channels for organic and paid. Mobile itself has like huge opportunities, but a lot of people competing for it. And again, organic and paid channels are not easy. In fact, Apple intentionally shuts down a lot of paid search companies or buys them and puts them out of business. So I think there's quite a bit of opportunities there. Pinterest is probably an up-and-coming platform, at least in the US. I don't know that it's at the same level of scale yet, but if your product is targeting women between the ages of probably like 20 and 40, that's where a lot of time is being spent.
Dave, one
Yeah.
question. Two questions I have. One is, consider that one of the startup is not working in which you have invested. So how long?
Only one of the companies I've invested in is not working?
I'm saying
that would
one
be
of
awesome.
one of the startup which is not working well.
Most of the startups I invest in are not working.
So how long do you stay with such a startup, and what do you
How long
do?
do I stay with them? I don't stay with them hardly at all. No, I mean, we have two programs. We have an accelerator program. We do about 120 companies a year in the Bay Area, and then another 40 in Mexico City. We do another 100 to 150 investments a year that are seed stage. With the seed stage investments, it varies quite a bit. We could be only an investor and nothing else. Sometimes, we are a lot more engaged. But usually the benefits that we're trying to create for the companies are probably more based on our network and the other founders and mentors, not so much based on our time. For the accelerator companies, we spend a lot of time with them during the 4 months or so that they're with us, and kind of weekly check-ins. But I would still say in most cases we're trying to provide a network of other community and network of other mentors and founders as the primary benefit. So we individually, don't spend a ton of time with at least the seed stage companies. With the accelerator companies, we probably are at a 1-to-5 ratio for the team members that are in the accelerator program.
Engagement happens in what form? Like mentoring?
Engagement between us and the companies. So I mean, I don't want to say that we're not value added, but I think there's a lot of VCs who think that they are God's gift to startups, and usually that's not the case. We would probably prefer to find a mentor in our network who's a domain expert, either in horizontal or vertical area, either skill set or industry, to help with companies. Sometimes that's other founders as well. There are things that I think we can be useful for, and particularly around the fundraising process. That's probably where we can be helpful, at least for the next stage of investment.
Technology support or
Tech support? Jesus Christ, no, I don't think so. I mean, yes, we have knowledgeable people who are engineers, but like I'm not going to, again, not a high point of leverage. There's other people who can do that, and if I'm going to spend time with an engineer, I probably wouldn't spend it on technology because that's not where I'm going to get the most bang for the buck. I'd probably want to sit down and be talking about a strategy that they don't have as much expertise around, and primarily that's going to be on customer acquisition. It might be on funding. Occasionally, it might be on getting acquisitions. Yeah, we haven't had as much resource for that. I think we're going to try and start providing more resources for that next year.
Acquisition means the selling point of the startup.
We have a lot of companies that have modest levels of traction, and maybe anywhere from $1 to $5 million a year, and interesting acquisitions for other companies. Probably, exits I would say in the range of maybe 5 to 25 million are possible. But a lot of times those companies don't have experience around that process. They may not start looking for it, and they have very little cash left. They just are unfamiliar with the process. So it's possible that we might be able to help turn a lot of zeros into ones and ones into twos or threes. Those may not be the biggest wins in our portfolio, but it's probably helpful for the entrepreneurs, and it's probably good recovery of capital for us. I think that's generally been an area that's not been paid too much attention to. Most VCs are probably looking at the higher performing companies in their portfolio. Most other VCs don't have as large a portfolio as we do to take a look at. So we have a lot of small companies, which, for a lot of founders, getting a $5 to $10 million acquisition would be a great story. So I'm just realizing, again, flaws in our model or weaknesses in our model. That's one of the things that we would probably want to spend more time in the future working on, is how to help entrepreneurs get through the end cycle of that. But of course, they have to get funding and get a product and get customers first before that part comes into play.
Hi, Dave. Hi.
We're sort of agnostic about that. I think we like people to come to our accelerator program if they're in earlier stages and they're trying to raise a seed round. We have brought companies over from all over, from India, Brazil, Japan, China, Europe, etc. For the people who are participating in our accelerator program, it's usually between 1 to 5 people on the team that are coming over. We tend to prefer probably some combination of engineer, designer, and marketing business person to come along. Sometimes the rest of the dev team, if it's larger, may stay in the place where they started from. Sometimes they stay in the States, sometimes they go back, sometimes some team members stay in the States and the others go back. But we would probably prefer that companies generally locate where they can find customers and employees, not where they can find money. But sometimes it's helpful to come to the Valley for fundraising purposes or just to get network and connections.
Hi, Dave. Hi.
Sorry, why don't we have a process for how we are answering questions? So how are you guys handing off the mic? Somebody's paying someone to get the mic, or what's
Yeah,
this?
seems like.
What is the duration of this?
Okay, I've answered a couple of your questions. Why don't I go to the person with the mic and we can hear them too. Yes, go ahead.
Right. So my question is on mobile payments. So now
Is on what?
mobile payments.
Mobile payments, yeah.
Yes. With Apple Pay in, what is that you'll look for in startups in this space, especially in developing economy?
I don't know that Apple Pay is going to dominate the universe of payments right away. It might in 3 to 5 years. But having seen, spent a few years at PayPal and seen a lot of other great companies, the great thing about payments is there's lots of options. So Stripe, Square, PayPal, traditional banks and other networks, carrier billing, Apple Pay, Bitcoin. There's just all sorts of different payment options. There's different types of payment customers. There's different geographies. So there's a very large number of payment services and financial services for both consumer and business that I think have not been funded. So that's an area we do look at quite a bit. It's a little bit challenging for us as a small fund to provide enough capital for those companies. So, financial services tends to be, and payments in particular, tends to be capital intensive. So we would probably be looking to do that with other partners, or find very experienced people who've been in the industry before. But we are looking at doing payment services in other markets. That's an area that we think there's a lot of potential.
What is your take on the lean startup movement?
What's my take on the lean startup movement? Is Eric Reese listening to me, or Steve Blank? So Eric and Steve are both investors in my fund. which I thank them very much. I think there's a lot of great concepts around lean startup, which, if applied properly, are extremely helpful. The one thing that I would probably take up and consider is lean startup is generally a local max optimization process. So if you're on the right path, lean startup can be a way to find the highest point on that mountain. If you're not on the right mountain, it may not be helpful to get you to the other higher mountain that's over across the valley. So sometimes there's not a pivot-based approach to getting to solutions. Sometimes it has to be more of a backflip or jump or, I don't know, zip line to the other local max.
So with so many solutions, so many solutions there, releasing MVPs, releasing not so half-baked products in a crowded market, is it right?
I am generally a fan of not spending a lot of money overbuilding products. That part of lean startup I generally agree with is get something into the market quickly, and where you have the opportunity for short cycle time and better, faster iteration and feedback, I would prefer that. I'm just saying there are some problems that can't be solved as easily with short cycle time and short iteration. Those are very dangerous places for entrepreneurs to tread. So if you think you're fucking Steve Jobs and that you need more cycle time to get an amazing product in market, you are probably wrong. Some of you might be right. But I don't really like to fund entrepreneurs who default that way. I have. Aaron Patzer at Mint was one of those. But in general, I prefer entrepreneurs who will get products to market quickly and are building products that can be brought to market quickly.
If I'm not wrong, you're also interested in Javelin.
About what?
Javelin, the product by Lean Startup.
The Lean Startup Machine folks, yeah. Yeah, and again, I don't mean to criticize Lean Startup too much. I think most of Lean Startup is on target. I'm just saying that it's generally a framework where if you're headed in the right direction, it will head you more in the right direction. But if you're headed in the wrong direction, Lean Startup is not a panacea to turn you into a great person for product thinking. And sometimes, I don't know, just not necessarily, there's a place for intuitive thinking and intuitive leaps, and there's a place for watching and observing customers and incremental modification to product.
Yeah.
I would default to the person with the mic if they haven't asked a question yet.
Just a quick related question, but scientists.
Sorry, did you hear what I just said?
Okay. Many multinational companies had the difficulties to enter India and had to adapt the model. How was it for you to invest here in India? Did you see anything different you had to do?
Sorry, you're saying why is it easy or hard for a white
No,
guy to invest
is there
in
any
India?
Indian way did you identify any Indian way in investing here into startups?
I don't know that you need to adapt money too much to culture. I think that money is valuable in most cultures. I started a business in California with 4 guys from Coimbatore in the early 90s, so even though I haven't been in India for much longer than 3 years, I've been very significantly exposed to Indian culture and people for probably more than half my life. So I don't think I'm inexperienced in kind of human problems, and there may be unique and different problems in India, but there's challenges in any culture with different ways the culture adapts itself to entrepreneurship. Probably the one that I would say there's some similarities maybe between Japan, India, UK, and that there's certain formalisms in the culture that make it harder for people to fail publicly, and that maybe makes it a little bit challenging. That's not always true. I think there's also, some stereotypical components of Indian culture which make for great storytelling, and I think that could lead to better customer acquisition and marketing. But I hesitate to suggest that all people who are brown act the same way. I mean, probably the more statistics-based way of looking at things is just what's, mobile phone penetration, smartphone penetration, credit card and financial payment penetration, what's languages, dominant languages. Like those are the things that I think probably affect business strategy a lot. There's probably an interesting point in time in the next 3 to 5 years where smartphone penetration and tablet penetration gets to a high enough level that you'll probably see local market languages start to emerge. There's probably at least 10 states within India that have 50 million speakers that aren't really being served by computing needs right now because you can't present the language appropriately. I'm not the most experienced person in that, but I think we would probably see an opportunity to start investing in local market languages in India within 5 years. We'd probably follow the Bollywood market and just look where the highest penetration of Bollywood movies are by language, and we'd probably follow that same strategy and prioritization for products and services. I'm guessing. Sorry, you had a question?
Just sort of going off the lean startup question a little bit, but could you talk a bit about quantifiable venture funding? Sort of you touched upon it the other day.
Quantifiable venture,
Quantitative, sorry.
Quantitative venture capital.
And
That's
with
a
respect to
high-minded phrase for spray and pray. So let me try and simplify the thought exercise. So the costs of computing have gone down considerably. The costs of reaching customers have gone down considerably, or at least there's a lot easier ways to get to customers, and they're probably more measurable. But there's a lot of continued failure in the market. And so if you look historically at how venture capital was constructed, you probably needed $3 to $5 million experiments to really get products to market and see whether things were working. Over the last 10, 15 years, that cost has dropped considerably, and now you can get products to market for a very small amount of money, certainly not much more than 100,000 US. And you're kind of saying, Dave, you're way off on a tangent, and this isn't the question that I'm asking?
Yeah, I was actually trying to specifically ask you, so with respect to lean startup, right?
Yep.
It offers a certain framework for measuring progress.
Yes.
So you spoke a little bit about local maximum optimization.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get a sense of how do you guys usually measure progress among the startups that you oversee?
Right.
And how do you help them avoid getting caught up in local maximum?
So there's probably a cost to building initial MVP and getting to market. There's a cost to doing early customer testing and development. There's some cost to figuring out unit economics. And then there's some cost to sort of getting scale going. So at each of those stages, we'd probably have a different set of way of looking at that. We tend to not even want to get into the weeds when they're still building products. So people who come to me and have an idea, I'm like, great, go build the product. It doesn't cost that much to build the product. You probably don't need my capital to spend weeks or even single months trying to build those products. The places where we probably like to get involved is after they got functional product, after they got early customer use, and enough customers that it's not accidental. And what we're trying to figure out is if we sharpen the abilities of that team or entrepreneur in doing customer acquisition, can we see improvement in unit economics and scale in customer acquisition? And that usually leads us to a possibility for successful business. So when we're making that first check investment, we're usually looking for modest levels of traction and functional products. And hopefully by the time they get through to the next cycle of funding, we would like to see more users, more revenue, other people investing, better unit economics, evidence of a scalable path to more customers. So if we see any of those 3 to 5 things going on, then we probably consider writing a second check. And we might look at our existing ownership and what's the cost of additional ownership on a relative basis to figure out whether we want to make that investment and for how much. But we typically are doing around 100K for the first check, whether it's accelerator or seed. About a third of the cases, we might do a follow-on investment for between 100 to 250K. And maybe in half of those, we might do a further investment of 250 to 500K. Obviously, there's other folks that are needed to provide capital in most cases, so we're rarely a lead investor except at the accelerator stage, and even there, usually we're working with other investors, which we prefer. But it's really fucking simple. You just write a lot of checks, and you see whether the companies make progress, and then you decide to invest if they're making progress, and progress is measured in users, revenue, or other funding. And venture capital is really not that fucking hard. Everybody makes it seem like it is, but it's kind of like, hey, do we think you're smart? Okay, great, here's a check. 6 to 12 months later, did you make progress? No. Okay, well, fuck you, sorry. Which might be possible. Internet of Things. Internet of Things falls into the category of terms that I think are generally bullshit, like big data and cloud and I don't know. There's other stuff, business intelligence. Internet of Things. What is Internet of Things? Some combination of hardware and software, I think, is what it is. Maybe connected internet hardware and software. Again, my bias against hardware is it's more expensive, it has longer cycle time, it may have a distributor that's required that will crush your margins. So added complexity and risk for any amount of hardware. That said, hardware costs are coming down and the ability to produce hardware quickly is increasing. So there are interesting hardware-software combinations that are kind of cool. Again, the thing that I would emphasize about both hardware, i.e. drones, and Internet of Things is people think products are fucking cool. And that's a terrible thing for entrepreneurs to fall into that trap. Because they start thinking the product's really cool and they start forgetting about what do customers need and pay for. So yes, they are cool, but you should be doing a lot of testing around customer need for what the fuck am I going to use a drone for, and what the hell is this Internet of Things that you're talking about? Oh, wearables, that's another one that's bullshit. Wearables, what the fuck is that? Yeah, so I would try and understand and test for customer need and monetization before you start spending a lot of money on those products. And potentially do the marketing exercise before you build or expend money on the product. Again, a lot of people build first, design second, market third. Should probably go in the exact opposite order. You should probably build marketing campaigns as test parameters first, understand customer need, and then reverse engineer back the product once you kind of figure out the need. And I'm getting the hook here, right?
So just a housekeeping thing, we've got 2 minutes to go. Maybe
2 minutes. So one more awesome, amazing question.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
We are in a very early stage of a startup, content plus e-commerce. And
what was the first word? Quantum?
Content, so user-generated content.
Content. Okay.
Integrated with e-commerce.
Yes.
So my question is, if we are seeing lots of other startups which are in very similar space,
okay.
Or the product looks somewhat similar. So what would you advise a startup in this situation to look at differentiation or just focus on the product? And
who are you selling to and what are you selling?
It's a fashion to consumers.
Okay, men or women?
Women, yeah.
Women. Older than, I don't know, what's the age range that's target demographic?
20 to 35.
Okay, and content, what kinds of content are you talking about?
So it's the influencers or the user, so influencers or bloggers are creating style boards which are shoppable.
Okay, so pictures or words?
Yes, pictures.
Videos?
Not videos right
pictures.
now. Right now it's only pictures coming from the e-commerce sites, which is paying us through affiliate.
And you're providing the pictures, or you're getting the customers? Or
yes,
we're
giving an interface where there's drag and drop of pictures for the influencers, and they're able to share it with their followers.
This is what I call the game. When I'm trying to figure out what the fuck the business is doing, I'm playing the game right now.
Okay.
So, okay, so you're providing a product to retailers to make their products more interesting to customers. You're aggregating customers. What part of the, who's your customer?
Sure, but our focus is on the fashion influencers, so that they
fashion influencers.
Influencers, bloggers.
Are you charging them for something, or
no,
are you presenting them to other people?
No, we are not charging them. We are paying them if the sales are happening.
Right. So who's paying you?
The branch if the products are selling, so affiliate.
So retailers of products are paying you,
yes.
Or affiliates who work with those
yes.
retailers are
yes.
paying you
yes.
to help them find social influencers
right.
who produce interesting pictures that drive consumer purchase of fashion for women.
Right. Perfect.
Got it.
So
okay, now what's the question?
My question was, how important is it to look at people in the similar space who are doing something similar and try to differentiate?
Okay.
Because several people ask us, what is your differentiation? But we don't see a very big differentiation in this early stage.
So I would not state that you're in the content and commerce business. I would say we're in the fashion commerce business for women, and we help clueless fucking retailers find social influencers who drive purchases. And maybe that's close to what you would do. And then I would be looking at who else is trying to aggregate social influence for women who buy fashion. And are you better or different than those other things? There's probably lots of people trying to do that, but if you have a unique angle on the social influencers or you have enough of them, or you have a specific type of fashion commerce that you're going after. I didn't ask you questions about is it new, is it old, is it expensive? You know, there's lots of other things we could ask and narrow that down. But you would want to try and identify who your competitors are and then perform some type of competitive differentiation and branding to help elevate your status against close competitors.
Okay.
By the way, I sound like I know what the fuck I'm talking about, but a lot of the time I don't.
Hi, Dave. I think this is the last question, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, you were telling that you have invested 5 companies in India.
25.
25 companies.
Not me
sorry.
personally all the time, but I did some of them.
Okay.
Pankaj
Okay.
Paul
And
did
you
most of
were
them.
telling that go and figure it out with them that what generally is that, right?
What's that?
You mean like who are interested or maybe who are looking for investment from you.
Yes.
What you told is go and talk to them or figuring it out that what generally you will look into it, right? I mean, so that the question is first of all, how the people knows that what are those 25 companies, and that the second
this
thing
is like how do I hack 500 is what you're asking, right? Okay.
and the other one is why the hell they will share that information to the people, other people. I mean, generally, because
Why do we or why don't we?
why do those 25 companies share that information that what you are looking for to invest?
Yeah, it's probably unfair because I'm asking them to be my due diligence in sourcing when I haven't really discussed that with them. It's just a hard problem. I mean, we get a lot of people asking, and so we're
Yes,
just
because
trying to figure
every
out.
investor tells like that where these people generally go, so these startups and all that stuff. First of all, figuring out where
Yeah, I
to
mean, there's
invest.
just way more demand than we could ever possibly satisfy. And because we are known to be an early stage investor and an investor from the Valley who invests internationally, everybody thinks they're a potential target, which is kind of true. So it's just hard because we have a lot to filter through.
But I have to disagree with you that there is a way more demand than that this thing. But I think some of these guys yesterday was even telling that there is a lot of cash piling up, right? So there is a lot of cash is there which they can't take it to their own countries. They have to invest. They're looking for at the same time. There is a lot of things probably not streamlined yet properly in this.
I think we're going to try and do 10 to 20 investments a year in India. There's probably several thousand people who would take our check. So we have to do a filtering exercise, hopefully with their help to self-filter, but not always.
But how we will figure it out that who are those 25 companies?
Who are the 25 companies we've invested in India? Oh shit, come on, just do some research, man. ZipDial, CartRocket, Source Easy, Tushki, Targeting Mantra, MyGola, thank you. It's probably on the website somewhere, or you can do this homework. That's not the hard part. Yeah. I mean, I think the question is whether whether those people are available enough in every city where there's interesting talent that they can reach those people. But, I mean, in general, what I'm just looking for is get other people who are known good sources to be references. Because when you just pitch me directly and I don't know who the fuck you are, it's just hard. It's hard to make that assessment very quickly. There's a reason that social proof actually works. It's actually logical.
I've got to say thank you. I think that's the
Yep.
end of the session.
Great.